everyone. Thank you so much for being here again today. I'm so excited to be here with Layne. And Layne, I'm going to let you give a quick introduction of who you are, what you focus on. But, today we're going to be talking about a lot to do again with hormones and just in different imbalances and how that can affect you and your adrenals and cortisol levels. And I know it's a hot topic just because people struggle with this all the time. So I'm super excited to dive in and hear a little bit more. But Layne, would love for you to give a quick intro.
Definitely. So thank you for having me. But I am a functional health practitioner. I've been working in the health and wellness space for over 13 years. I have helped tons of people over the years, dealing with like ongoing health concerns, seeing tons of chronic disease, but ultimately realizing many years ago that our traditional medical system definitely falls short when it comes to actually having people get better and stay better. That's the key.
Yep.
And medicine is great for triage and acute care, but when it comes to those ongoing health struggles or those nagging symptoms, then a root cause approach is incredibly important. And root cause is the name of the game for functional medicine, pretty much. So we want to understand what led to those imbalances in the body and what we can do to support the body to heal, because we are completely capable of healing. We just have to know what tools are best used for the body in a given circumstance. And we're also different. So a unique approach is really important too.
Yeah, no, it is so important. And it's so funny you say like getting to the root cause because allopathic medicine does not. It's just to treat the symptom culture and everything like that. So in your opinion, how would you describe root cause for people? I know we've gotten into it before, but for people listening, because I think a lot of people will be like, oh, my root cause is the condition that I have. So it's not necessary. It's in that actually is a symptom. So how would you describe root cause?
Oh, so we could talk about this forever. So there's three major root causes of everything, of all disease. Or have you ever like heard of disease like dis-ease, like the hyphenated form? So that's like a non-diagnosed imbalance in the body where you're not sick enough to have a diagnosis, but something's not right. There's something that's off. And so the three root causes of any of that is nutrient poor food, stress, and toxins. So obviously those are very broad categories, but to start with nutrient poor food, of course, we need nutrition to properly function. We need it for hormone production, for energy production, for detoxification. So if we're not getting adequate nutrition for our food and we're instead consuming crap food, junk food, standard American stuff, we're not only depleting our body of nutrients, but also causing more toxic load on the body because our system's having to process that.
Yep.
When it comes to stress, of course, we're all going to experience stress. It's a day-to-day thing, especially in our modern world. But we're not designed to be in a chronic state of stress. We're actually our bodies are brilliant and very resilient too. And
Yep.
so we're built to be able to bounce back from a stressful event very rapidly. But unfortunately, in our modern world, that the stress doesn't go away. There's
Nope.
always something going on. And there's so many different types of stressors too. So that's going to automatically put pressure on your adrenal glands, and that's going to affect your cortisol, which is your stress hormone, your adrenaline, all of that, which is going to affect all of your other hormones, affect your gut health, affect your mental health, and the list goes on. And then the third portion is toxins, which can come from food and it can come from exposure. So what is in our environment? What are we slathering on our skin? What is in our water? What is in our food, like I mentioned, but also viral load. I know you have your Lyme history. That's a toxin, mold, heavy metals. So all of those are not supposed to be there in our body. I take that back. Some things can be there in low amounts. Like, for example, we have some viruses that live in our body.
Yep.
That's natural, but there can come a point where some of these things are not well tolerated. It's usually a cumulative effect. It's not just like one lone thing that caused all your problems, but it was more of a compounded effort from all of them creating like a perfect storm. So those are the three main root causes. And that, of course, leads to symptoms or even a diagnosis. And that's what people often align with, whether they mean to or not. But they can say, well, I have XYZ, therefore I will always struggle.
Yep.
And that's understandable because
Yeah.
you're suffering through that. And it's hard to imagine.
What your doctor told you too. So like you
Right.
know, and we normalize that in a way. So yeah.
We do. We like, here's a pill.
Yep.
It'll cover up your symptoms. And thankfully, it can help your symptoms on a short-term basis, but it's not a good long-term approach at all.
No, definitely not. Thank you so much for getting into those. And it's so funny because I've heard that before, like simplified, and I've never actually dug into and asked it. And I've also heard it described too as like, look, think of the toxic load in your body as like a bucket. So like the first little things that happen, your body can pretty much tolerate and process. But the more and more you add in bad diet, stress, and any viral load or toxins, it just your bucket overflows and then your body's just like, nope, can't do this. And so the symptoms for people can be all over the map, but it depends on, who you are as an individual and stuff like that. But I do remember when I first started the whole journey, not putting two and two together because I was having skin rashes, food allergy. It all seemed separate, but I was having hormonal issues and it was not separate. And I remember being like blown away when my hormones evened out, when I was I had fixed my diet and then been taking some herbal supplements and everything like that. So it's just kind of mind blowing. So what do you find is the biggest challenge for you when people are coming on board, or, when they come across? Is it hard to connect the dots for people, or?
Sometimes it's tricky, yeah, but the way I approach things is getting really, really detailed, like down to the nitty gritty. Like, tell me about when you were a child. Tell me about the sicknesses that you had as a child, your exposures. Like, do you have mercury fillings in your mouth? Or did you ever have mono? Have you ever been exposed to mold? So have you had tick bites? All these little pieces of the puzzle can start to come together. And even without any of those things, you can still have some type of inciting event, like a stressor in your life, whether you realized it or not. It could have been a good thing. Like pregnancy is a great form of stress, but it's nonetheless, a stressor on the body. And so there's usually some sort of trigger that kind of is where people can pinpoint, I don't know what happened at this time, but this was the time when I noticed a shift in things.
Yep. Oh God, I wish I found you back in 2014, because that shift for me was going on a big trip and I got sick while I was over there. And then I took, I think, Cipro, which knocks out everything, all good and bad bacteria, everything. But I got home and then it was poor diet, stress. I was moving, new job, new everything. So stress was crazy. And then all of a sudden, that's when all the random symptoms started to pop up. So I was like, yep, that makes sense if you can't even, pinpoint it or
Yeah.
whatnot.
And like you mentioned, like the random stuff, like the skin rash and the other things that you experience, like they often do seem like they're not connected because they're in different body parts or different triggers. But at the end of the day, most things can be connected in some way or the other. We have all these specialists in the medical world, like you have a cardiologist and a dermatologist and a pulmonologist. So you have all these specialties, they're brilliant people. They're so good at what they do, but they don't always communicate with the others. And you have to remember the body is a whole. We were designed for all of our body parts and organs and systems to operate in concert pretty much. So you can't forget that there is a way that they all work together. And to think that you can see like 5 different doctors for 5 different problems is probably not going to get you the results you're looking for.
Definitely not. No, it does the opposite. It puts you on more medication that can just slow your healing process and not getting to the root cause for your body and stuff. So in speaking about that though, because when people find you, are they pretty much toxic load, kind of they're overloaded, or is it more proactively?
Some of both. So there's definitely some people who've been struggling for a couple years to many years. Some say like, I don't ever remember feeling well, or I've had gut issues my entire life. So there's certainly ones who've been, really going through it for a while, but there's others who might just have a few concerns and they're being more proactive. Like I'm working with someone right now, early 30s, lots of stress, lots of like being pulled in lots of different directions, like with work and family and whatnot. And she has, high cholesterol, for example. So it's not an imminent risk for her, but she does want to feel better on a daily basis, and she doesn't want to be on cholesterol medications in a few years. So she's definitely being more proactive about it before things get worse. So I love when people do that, because that just shows me how motivated you are and that you are not taking, the Band-Aid approach as a lot of people get pushed upon them.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is because when people do take the Band-Aid approach, which I figure like is a lot of us, because we won't seek out help until you're all of a sudden in pain. So, it can be overwhelming with all of these things being out of balance. And then if there's change in lifestyle and diet and things that you use on your skin, and it can be totally overwhelming. So how do you work with people to address that?
Love that question. So, one thing to note is that everybody is unique and different. So, I will always meet you where you are. If you're not ready to make certain changes, I'm not going to force it on you. I'm going to educate you. I'm going to help you make the best decision for yourself. But at the end of the day, it's your decision, and that's okay. That's it's your body, it's your life. That's how it's supposed to be. So, I'm always trying to find like what is the most attainable solution or step for a given person to take right now. And baby steps are great. We can't change everything overnight. We shouldn't be expected to. I couldn't do that, so I wouldn't have someone else try to do that. And so it's all about what's attainable now and where can we get started, knowing that perfection isn't possible, but we always want to do our best and prioritize progress as much as we can.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I love that you said that because I've actually worked with practitioners before where and then left with this huge list and it gets overwhelming and then I don't do it. So I'm like, yep, no, can't do that. So I think it's so important to work with people at where they're at and what's going to make a difference. Because it can be overwhelming and it can be overwhelming making the switch into more root cause approach when you're used to just like, oh, can I take a pill for that? So it's overwhelming and stressful. So how do you find with even the hormone piece, what can go out, what can be some root causes for your hormones being out of whack? Because I mean, I know it can be a lot of different things, but what are some of the symptoms that people might be seeing that it's like, wait, there's an answer for that. You can dig in deeper. So
Yeah, so I always think of the adrenal gland health as priority. There's lots of other things we'll talk about too, but adrenal gland and cortisol release is one of the first steps because cortisol influences all other hormones from your thyroid, your insulin and glucose levels, your estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. And so you really have to make sure your cortisol is getting better or in check already before you can really tackle the other things to a certain extent. So always addressing cortisol. If you have low cortisol, you might feel super tired. You might feel burnt out, brain fog, dizziness, especially with standing, low blood pressure, low blood sugar, low heart rate. So those are really common with suppressed cortisol production. And one thing with that is your body's doing that on purpose. It's doing it because it's smart. Your body's not against you. It's not saying, oh, we want you to be tired because you deserve it. Something ridiculous that sometimes
or I'm just getting older. Yeah. Yeah.
like you're not, it's not because you're getting older. It's not because you're a working mother. It's not because, all these, I mean, those things
Yeah.
can be
Yeah.
stressors, of course, but that's not, we shouldn't accept that as an answer because we're not meant to feel run down on a daily basis. We're meant to feel well and thrive, and we deserve to feel that way. So always looking at adrenal health is number one, especially with energy, stress, mood changes. When it comes to more like sex hormone stuff, like with estrogen and progesterone, lots of period problems like heavy, painful periods, irregularities, PMS, headaches that accompany that time of the month and everything. Whenever you have symptoms like that, I think about estrogen dominance, which is sometimes an actual excess amount of estrogen, but not always. It could be that you have low progesterone that's throwing off that balance, which is usually due to stress, or it could also be because we're exposed to false estrogens or xenoestrogens in the environment through our personal care products, through pesticides, through plastics. Those substances can actually absorb through our skin or however we're being exposed to them, and they can bind to estrogen receptors. Our body thinks they look like estrogen, so it's going to allow them to bind, and it can throw off that balance, even if our estrogen levels are actually normal. And so
You just
that's
into that so perfectly, by the way, because I've heard it before and never like I've heard it as like endocrine disruptors and stuff like that, but never knew what that meant or that it was mimicking estrogen, by the way. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm happy to. I love explaining it in this way because I agree. Like when you hear endocrine disruptors, you're like, but what does that mean for me?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And what does it mean? What's happening to my body when that's happening? And I did also read recently too that there's some quote out there of like infertility for men and women is on the rise, like at a crazy rate because of some of the endocrine disruptors in our products and toxic loads. And can you touch on that at all? And maybe not the percentage, but kind of the rise of infertility and how that's affecting people?
Yeah. So speaking of men in particular, and I'm not like a specialist in infertility or male
Yeah.
hormones or anything like that, but just from what I've learned through various podcasts and different research articles is that sperm count's decreasing, and that could be related to plastic exposure of one of many things.
Yeah.
When it comes to female fertility, though, you need good balance of your hormones. So
Yeah.
one example of why people either have trouble getting or staying pregnant is it goes back to stress, because when your cortisol is dysregulated, that is going to influence your progesterone, which is needed to keep a pregnancy. And
Mhm.
so that's a top priority. Toxins, of course, are a stressor on the body. So that all goes hand in hand. Essentially, your body's too busy trying to fight the stressor or deal with the toxin, and it doesn't have the energy to put towards growing a human. So
Oh, no, that's good. And it does. It's happened to a lot of people I know. And just so how do you though work with people to take down their stress levels? Because, there can be stress from many, like we say, many different things. So what are some of the top tools that you use to work with people on stress? Because their everyday lives can be crazy and busy. And then, if you're trying to get pregnant and those things can be very stressful. So
yeah. So first, prioritizing the foundations. Are you getting sleep? If you're not, we got to figure that out. We got to figure out what can we supplement or tweak in your routine to get short-term relief, and then we'll figure out what the root cause is. Also, what is your nutrition? Are you eating enough? Are you eating enough nutrient density? Are you hydrated enough? How are you able to cope with stress? But well beyond that is like really looking at the internal balance of things. I really value lab work when it comes to this, because of course there's mental emotional stress that we can't always pinpoint or figure out, why am I stressed all the time? It's not just in our head, there's probably something that your body's actively up against. And so I really value looking at just traditional blood work for one, because you can look at it through a functional lens where you're looking at optimal ranges, not just normal ranges. There's a big difference in that. And it takes like a trained eye to be able to navigate that. And then I do value functional labs too. So a lot of times we do Dutch tests to evaluate different hormonal imbalances, especially because it gives us a good cortisol curve. So seeing how we can support the body while we continue to dig deeper. One thing to note on supplements is that they, in a sense, are a band-aid as well. They're not great for long term, but they can help you get relief and help the body restore that balance as you continue to peel those layers back till you get to the root. And then some other things to consider are gut health for sure. Whenever you can't leave out gut health when you talk about health in general, like there's always some layer.
always some piece.
Yeah, even like to some extent at least. And so, depending on symptoms and what people are going through, like if they're having a lot of GI distress, heartburn, bloating, IBS type symptoms. IBS is not a diagnosis, by the way. It is a collection of symptoms that they don't know what's causing it.
Yeah, I've heard people too be like, "Oh, I have IBS," and I'm like, "Oh, there's something else going on." But I'm not. I mean, I'm not a doc. I just know from my knowledge of working with practitioners, but I know it's stuff like that. But yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah.
So looking at the gut microbiome can be really, really insightful for that too, because we should have like a good balance of bacteria, viruses, all of that in our gut system. And when that balance is thrown off, it can create those IBS symptoms. It can create the bloating, and all of those like undesirable GI effects. And so looking at that is definitely a source of stress as well, because one major reason that the gut creates a stress response is through our vagus nerve, which is a nerve that runs from our gut to our brain. And it's our gut that influences our brain, telling us, is our world safe or is it not? Should we be worried or are we like able to rest? And so if our brain doesn't get that signal and it's not being told things are okay, we can rest, then it's not really going to shift into that parasympathetic mode, which is where we heal and thrive and rest and digest. And so that's a major influencer with stress as well. So definitely looking at gut health and seeing what we can do to improve that.
That's all. Yeah, no, I've heard that before. But you, just by the way, thank you. So you have such a great way of articulating how these things work. Because I've done a lot of interviews and heard a lot, but it makes so much sense. So
Oh,
thank
I
you.
appreciate that. I have these conversations all the time. So it's just like,
Yeah.
we talk
And
about it a
trying to describe to people and everything.
lot.
So and that was going to be a question is, so when you're working with clients, do you have I know everybody's different and stuff like that, but do you have a program where it's like, here are recommended tests and then here are recommended supplements and herbs to take? Or, just if you can talk about a little bit about your process and program.
Definitely. Yeah, so I'm completely virtual, which I love because people can live wherever and it's like from the comfort of your home. You don't have to fight traffic or like, you know, account for the time that may take. So it's really, really cool. And I don't think it really takes away much either from the relationship because we see each other so often. So how I work is I usually do a 4 to 6 month program where we meet every other week or so, sometimes more, sometimes less, just depending on what they're going through, what they need. And so during the initial intake, we spend 90 minutes going through their entire health history. We're starting the puzzle piecing. We're really getting that foundational information so that we know here's our top priorities. Here's where we need to put our first, efforts and focus. And from there, I decide, what labs would be most beneficial to us. So sometimes it is really similar across client to client. There is usually some type of variation, just depending on what's going on. But I commonly do kind of your more standard blood work, a full hormone evaluation, a full thyroid panel, and sometimes the stool analysis with a GI map, again, depending on their symptoms and what's going on, and then a comprehensive nutrient evaluation too. So we can see what are you low in, what can we supplement short term, and also some organic acids, amino acids, tons of different markers that can really help guide us in our initial therapies and strategies. And so I do value supplements. Again, hopefully these aren't all long-term things. It's more of like a short-term approach so that we can help your body rebalance. But I build a protocol for them. And that's kind of the most unique portion of it is everybody's protocol is different. There's not a on this week you're going to do this and next week that. That's why that one-to-one approach is so important to me, is because I get to customize it to them for, one, what's attainable for them, what can they accomplish, and also what's the most important for them right now.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And just, it's amazing to work with that. And so all those testing you mentioned, are some of them covered by insurance and some not? I just know that's a typical question that might come up for people because in the holistic space, insurance does not cover practitioners and working with practitioners, but some of the testing could be. Do you work with people on that or?
So I don't bill insurance at all. If I did, I would be very, very limited in how I could help people with like the amount of time I could spend and the state in which they live as a big one.
Yeah.
There are some of these tests you can have your family doctor or practitioner order for you and run them through insurance, but I cannot order them for that purpose. So
Okay.
if they're able to say, here's my labs that I had earlier this year that insurance covered, I'm happy to use those or have them go back to their provider and request additional things that I know insurance would likely cover. A lot of the functional tests like the Dutch, the GI map, those usually aren't covered.
No, they're not covered, but they're totally worth it. Like that's, especially when I remember in starting my journey too, I added in a lot of time by trying to do it without testing. And so I will say it started with like elimination diets and that was my practitioner working with me to keep my budget down, which was amazing. And now looking back at it, I'm like, I wish I put the money into the testing to really target what was actually happening. Cause it would have saved just a lot of time in my journey. So,
Yeah, I'm honestly the same way. So I didn't do any functional testing in the beginning for myself. And I really wasn't equipped with that knowledge at the time. I didn't know about these things. And now that I have learned, I'm like, wow, I could have really streamlined this approach for myself. But the beauty of it is I've learned how I have been able to help myself. And I know there's tons of other people going through something similar. So kind of having that background and having that experience myself helps me know how to like navigate the situation for people going through similar struggles.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's so amazing. And so what are some of the other things that you hear or I'm trying to think of how to ask this question the proper way, but it's almost like the misinformation out there about hormonal health and, I don't know. Do you hear kind of trends with people that come in being like, oh, I thought it was, I don't know, whatever it is. So, yeah, that's, I guess, I know. I'm just trying to think of like misinformation that's out there around hormonal health and what you hear with people.
Mm-hmm. So one big one is there's no point in testing your hormones because they change all the time. True, they fluctuate constantly. That's a given. And that's how they're supposed to work. But you can test hormones in a strategic way to get a good representation of what the baseline may be. So a Dutch test is really great for that. For example, with the cortisol test, the Dutch test has cortisol plus estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, a lot of their metabolites, lots of other good things on there. But if you were to go and just get a one-time cortisol test, it's probably not going to tell you very much. And it's probably going to be normal for most people, but you could still be suffering from low cortisol, but you have to get the full picture. So that's why testing can be very helpful despite what others may say. Another big one is, I had really heavy periods all my life. So I was put on birth control. That was the only thing that helped me. Therefore, that's just how I am. That's just like my baseline hormone balance. And so there's tons of stuff you can do actually to improve that. And it goes back to a lot of those xenoestrogens is a big one, is our environmental exposure, what we're putting on our skin, how those things can mimic estrogen in the body, but also just helping them understand what led to that situation, because it's much more than just toxic exposure. But one big thing, people don't like talk about this very much, but how often are you pooping? Because if you're not going every day, that's a problem, because we also have to detox our hormones. They can become a toxic substance if they're not eliminated properly, and they get eliminated in the end through the stool. So if they're getting recirculated, they can cause a lot of havoc on the body.
Wow. And I did not realize that. Coming back into the system again like that. But that's nuts. But yeah, I'm glad. Thank you for addressing those things, because I've definitely heard it from people too, with what's normal or not and stuff. So and I have friends, or know people, not even friends, but know people that are like, oh, I'm early menopause, or I just get my period 3 times a month, and it kind of is what it is, and I just have to suck it up. And I'm like, oh no, go get checked out.
Yeah,
um
there's
no,
hope.
yes, yeah. Is there anything else that you want to get out there for people to hear and learn from, and just to know in general?
Yes. So I truly believe in like a unique, individualized approach. I do not believe there's a one size fits all protocol for people. There may be something that helps a lot of people, but I think the personalization aspect of it is really what helps you see that success more likely anyway. And so that's always number one for me, is like helping the individual, treating the whole person. And so try not to fall for these one size fits all protocols, especially if they haven't worked for you in the past. There's a reason why. Another reason why like things might not have worked for you, or like maybe supplements didn't work, is there's several reasons. Again, it might not have been personalized to your unique needs. It may not have been the proper form of supplements, because a lot of people, there's a stigma with supplements. They can say, well, they don't really do anything. They're a waste of money. They may just make your urine expensive.
Yeah.
And these things. But what it comes down to is the quality of them. Are they in the actual active form where your body can use them, or are they in the like cheaper, less active form where essentially they're not worth it at that point?
Okay.
Another thing that I hope everyone knows is you are worth the investment in your health. I promise you, you will not regret it. But also always like listen to your body. Symptoms are a warning sign. They are a gift, and it's your body crying out for help essentially. So try not to ignore those things, especially if they're recurrent or things are getting worse or adding on. And so always listen to your body and know that there is a reason that that's happening, and there is a root cause that we can find. It's just a matter of like investigating it properly and having the support, which is the big thing. Like you were saying earlier, you were on like this whole list of, you had this whole protocol that's like, well, where do I even start? And that's where the support really comes in, and it's helping you navigate those things, and also navigate different obstacles that might come up, because there will inevitably be bumps in the road for anybody's healing journey. I mean, myself included. And so having someone in your corner to help you through that time will be crucial, so that you don't fall off track and you can continue to build progress as you go.
No, I love that. And then I had another question pop up after that. And I think you make such a good point by even just being able to work with someone. Everybody's individual. But when we say everything goes back to the gut, um, and people are like, well, I just want to do it for free. I want to do it without a practitioner and just like eat a healthy diet and everything. And I personally had this experience, but couldn't lose weight, couldn't do anything. It took working with a practitioner and investing in some herbal supplements that were specific to me to be able to do that. Can you explain that piece a little bit, of there are certain things that you can do to clean up your diet and environment and everything, but what are some of the benefits of working with someone and getting the right supplements for your body? Because I couldn't lose weight for years. It was kind of crazy. I was like, I'm not eating anything and I'm eating healthy and I just can't lose any weight. So yeah, so I ended up going with a practitioner, but I run into a lot of people who are just like, I don't want to invest in working with a practitioner right now. And I know they're having these issues. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so I totally get that. And I think it's reasonable to see what you can do on your own, but don't try not to extend that so long that your suffering just like keeps going. So I think it's completely fine to try to tweak some foundational habits, improving your nutrition, making sure you have like really good sleep habits and stress resilience habits. Because again, we can't avoid stress, but we can adapt to it better to where it doesn't affect us so deeply. And so if you can get the foundations in place, but you're still struggling, then I would say it's time to like seek help, because there are people who can help you. You don't have to do this on your own.
No.
And when you do have that extra support, you can really get down to the bottom of things so much faster and get relief faster, but also that lasting wellness that you want. So when it comes to, you were saying you did like an elimination diet. So that's a great first step, but it's also just the first step.
Yes.
If
Yep.
you have food intolerances, of course you want to eliminate what could be intolerant, but because there are common ones across the board that are very prevalent. But if you just eliminate that, that's not healing your gut. It'll help, because again, you're reducing that inflammation and toxic load, but you're not actually healing the gut lining, which is why a lot of food intolerances can develop, and you're not healing the immune system. So you really want to have targeted supplements for that reason. And
Okay.
that's where working with someone and doing specific testing can be really helpful.
Okay, that makes sense. That totally makes sense, because that's just like, if I was sitting there, I used to be like, well, I can heal myself. My body can heal itself, but it didn't. It needed guidance and it needed the support. And that makes sense that it was trying to heal the gut because all the damage that had already been done. So
Mhm.
just eating clean was only one step of it. So yeah.
And to your point, we can heal ourselves. Our bodies are so capable of healing.
Mhm.
But sometimes you do need that push in the right direction. It's not that I'm healing anybody, I'm helping them heal themselves.
Yep.
And it's because of what I've seen in practice. It's what I've seen that work for other people and myself, and what I've learned over the years. And so that's where having someone lead you along the way and make sure you're kind of, like I said earlier, like streamlining the approach, it can help so much.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. Who's your ideal client? Who do you seek out?
I seek out who I was 4 years ago.
Yes.
Pretty
Yep.
much.
I feel like that's so normal. Yes.
Yeah. So I was in my mid to upper 20s. Pretty much the millennial generation is like where my heart is, because that's
Yep.
me. And so women, especially, because we tend to like put ourselves through so much stress, and men and women are just different in the way we handle day-to-day stuff. And of course I relate to that on a whole nother level.
Yep.
And people, especially dealing with excess stress, burnout, overwhelm. You feel like you can sleep all night, but you still feel exhausted when you wake up. You're reliant on multiple cups of coffee just to feel somewhat normal. Or
Yep.
maybe you're not sleeping well at all and you don't know why you can't sleep. So a lots of like mood and energy and stress situations, but also if you're having period problems, if you're having like cortisol, adrenal imbalances, or you think that you might, then that would be definitely someone I would love to help. Of course, like we said, gut is always usually involved. So gut issues can
Yep.
fit really well in there. And also people who are super motivated and driven to get to their root causes. They just need that assistance to make it happen for themselves. And there's so much information out there that it's hard to know where to start sometimes. A lot of stuff is conflicting. And so people who are tired of not knowing what's right for them and are ready for that unique individualized approach.
I love that. That's why, yeah, and you nailed it. There is so much information out there and it's so overwhelming, and you can find or your doctor might say like, oh, that's not a thing. Like you just have like it's just there's a lot of conflicting stuff. So on that note, you can always listen to yourself. I think you said that. Listen to yourself and listen to your body. So what's your just in closing, what's your biggest piece of advice for people in life in general, or yeah, just in life or in general?
Hmm. So number one would still be listen to your body always, and be your best advocate is probably a close runner up, because no one's going to look out for you as much as you are. And so that's why you have to stand up for yourself and demand better when it comes to your wellness and what's important to you. So don't give up on your journey. There are people out there who are ready and willing to help you.
I love that. That's amazing. And so true, from coming from me, from you, being through it, like, yeah, just never give up. So you can find it. Well, Layne, this was amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, all this information. You're just a wealth of knowledge. And I'm like, I feel like I could keep firing away questions. Like,
I've enjoyed it so much. Thank you for having me.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking another holistic view of your health with us. I hope you've really enjoyed today's discussion, and as always, take control of your own wellness journey by exploring the practitioners and modalities available near you or on our directory at www.holistichealthcollab.com. Don't forget to subscribe here so you don't miss an episode, and you can also find more holistic health tidbits at Holistic Health Collab on Instagram. Please leave a rating and review to help us reach more people that might need to hear this information. If you have any questions about today's show or any ideas for future episodes, or if you just want to reach out, you can contact me directly, Kate Maslowski, at kate@holistichealthcollab.com. You can just put podcast in your subject line. Again, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.